It's a decent segue there because you said you interviewed Bruce Mitchell. Um, that kind of segues into I don't know how much wrestling like breaking news you cover on either one of your podcasts, but I know Mondays Greg and I always go over like the latest wrestling news that has come out and MMA news as well. We cover UFC and Bellator and whatnot. And recently I've run into a problem with because I compile my news from all over, Cage Side Seats, Wrestling Observer, PW Insider, Sports Illustrated, all that stuff. And recently I've found out that while Bruce Mitchell is popular among fans as well, and I'm trying to think, he always pops up on my Twitter feed for a suggestion of, I might want to follow him. I can't think of his name now. Wade Keller. That's it. People like him always pop up. I follow Dave Meltzer. I found out that you can insult the other two and you might get a little bit of hate or question them and you might get a little hate. But if you insult Dave Meltzer online, my God, you might as well walk up and smack Jesus across the face to most fans. I found that
Yeah.
out the hard way.
Yeah, it's crazy. I haven't. I'm not as bold as you. I do not question Messiah Dave on online. Sometimes I do in my head, but I think that those are just the demons creeping in.
Well,
But
like a friend
I
of
mean,
mine pointed out, not to cut you off, but a friend of mine pointed out, if you go to cagesideseats.com, they have something called Rumor Roundup every week, and most of the things that Dave Meltzer says work their way into that section. So, if
for
you
sure.
if you think about it, it's not all fact.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. I do think a lot of the times he's getting leads and then putting his own spin on that, his own opinion, and then maybe the lead falls short. So, and then his opinion kind of brings it kind of far fetched to begin with. So, you have to remember he is working with rumors and sources. But as
Right.
far as his reviewing of matches, I do feel like creating the 5-star scale is something that should go down in wrestling history as the way we should do it. It should be like how America it does metric, or you know what I mean. Like it's our way of measuring a great match. So I think for doing that, he uh, he he gets a 5 stars in my book.
My problem with the rating system is obviously it's all subjective. It's easy for me to say. And wrestling, is meant to be subjective and whatnot. But it just seems like, and I'm a big fan of New Japan. Greg is not at all. He mainly just watches WWE, and he used to be a big fan of, WCW and that kind of stuff back in the day. And there for a while we followed TNA until it changed and whatnot. But it seems that Meltzer and many people have pointed out, he seems very biased about what he's giving 5 stars to. You know what I mean?
For sure, yeah, it does have to be a certain style, and definitely has to be a certain caliber. But yeah, I mean, I don't. He is he. I think he might be creeping up there, and getting a little bit more maybe falling a little off in his age. But for the '90s when the newsletter was coming out, he was the godfather of all this stuff that we're talking about now, like
Right.
like like no one was covering wrestling solely to cover wrestling like in a shoot style. I think it really it helped the business move forward. So even though he's kind of slipping a little bit, we got to remember how many years he's been on top. So it's normal for him to maybe come down a little bit now.
Well, and my thing for him isn't, I never mean any disrespect. I mean, when I mock him, it's more of not mocking him. It's more of mocking the people who worship the ground he walks on. Because if he says something, all of a sudden everybody goes, oh, well, it's fact because Dave said it. And I chuckle a little bit at that. But, I definitely respect him and Keller and Mitchell and all those people. Anybody involved in wrestling reporting, and it's something I would, hell, if I could have done that way back in the day, if I could do that now, I'd be, and even Brian Alvarez, people like that. Great work. I respect them and all that. My only problem is, like I said, it's mostly the people who, if you happen to question, because the only thing I simply did was because he had posted something on Twitter about whether or not Daniel Bryan is cleared, and he stated it as fact. And I said, well, that could be, but I said, they could, it's private medical records. They could not be telling you because they don't have to. And all of a sudden, everybody jumped on my back. And then he himself actually replied to me with a smarmy comeback. And I went, wow, Dave, buying into your own hype a little bit much. But
For sure.
I do respect him and all that. And I would love to have actual conversations with, the reporters of wrestling because, they're in this stuff day in and day out, whereas I do it as a hobby.
Oh yeah, for sure. I definitely know what you mean. I definitely give tons of respect to Dave Meltzer, Brian Alvarez, but I must say I've known Bruce for a little longer. I've known him for since I've been alive. I
Oh,
went to
wow.
his house. And, yeah, I used to go to his house when I was a little kid. Him and my dad are buddies, and I would watch wrestling matches and see him typing away on the computer, see him typing away on his Mac way back in like the Attitude Era. I
Huh.
didn't know what he was typing. I didn't know what he was doing, but he was writing the old torches and everything in the reviews. And his house was a pretty awesome house to watch wrestling with back in the day. So that's how I knew Bruce, and that's kind of what we were talking about. He used to go to all the old NWA and WCW tapings in the Greensboro Coliseum, which is right down the street from my house.
Hmm.
So yeah, I got to admit I knew Bruce a little differently than I know of Dave and Brian.